I don't know. Would you call that an example of weaponization, Attorney General Bondi? Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Ultimate weaponization. And weaponization under Donald Trump has ended. It has ended. Harmeet Dillon is running our civil rights unit, and she is doing an incredible job. No longer will parents be targeted. No longer will parents who care about whether their elementary school children have to read a transgender book.
A fiery Senate confrontation has Washington on edge. Senator Josh Hawley goes head-to-head with Attorney General Pam Bondi, accusing the Department of Justice of crossing the line. From allegations of FBI surveillance on sitting lawmakers to claims of political bias deep inside the Justice Department, this hearing exposes questions that reach beyond party lines. For anyone who values privacy, liberty, or simple fairness, what happened here matters. Today, we'll unpack the most explosive moments and what they reveal about how power is really used in Washington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, good to see you. Welcome. I've been listening closely in this hearing, and I've heard over and over from my Democrat colleagues concerns about targeting political enemies, and they've accused you of all manner of things and the current president. I've also heard them said, and I just wrote it down because I wanted to be sure I heard it correctly. I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. That's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Let's look at it. We've got a list. Tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators. Gee, it sure looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concern whatsoever.
Senator Josh Hawley takes on Attorney General Pam Bondi over shocking claims that the FBI spied on U.S. senators. The moment Hawley raised that allegation, the entire chamber froze. He named Lindsey Graham and Marsha Blackburn, 2 sitting senators, and suggested their phones were secretly monitored under orders linked to special counsel Jack Smith. If that's true, it's not just a scandal, it's an assault on the balance of power. The FBI and DOJ, created to serve the law, would have been watching the lawmakers who oversee them. For many Americans who lived through the post-Watergate years, that's a nightmare scenario come back to life. Hawley warns this isn't politics, it's principle. If senators aren't safe from surveillance, what chance do citizens have? And that question hits home for anyone concerned about privacy in a digital world, where almost everything leaves a trace. So tell me, do you believe government surveillance is a necessary tool for national security, or has it quietly become a political weapon?
We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for a Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. You've seen this document, Attorney General Bondi. Well, what was going on here? Who ordered this? Who ordered the tapping of the phones of United States senators?
Senator Hawley, I cannot discuss the details of that right now for very good reason.
You're going to do a thorough investigation into this, I trust. Is that correct?
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about this.
And you're going to figure out who was involved in this, who signed off on it, who knew about it. You're going to get to the bottom of all of it. Is it correct?
Yes, and I've spoken to Director Patel about it, and he is committed to doing this.
Well, I can tell you, we already know many of the details. We already know that this was ordered by the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, who reported directly to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. And we know that Jack Smith was on his witch hunt because he was directed to do so by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Let's just remember. Let's take a walk down memory lane. April 2nd, 2022, the New York Times. Garland faces growing pressure. The Times says as recently as late last year, that would have been 2021, Mr. Biden confided to his inner circle he believed former President Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. It goes on to say that the Biden was frustrated with Garland and wanted him to take decisive action against Trump. Here's what we're talking about. Trump, of course, was a private citizen at the time. So he appoints his own hitman Jack Smith, who goes after the president, former president, who goes after members of this body. You know, the thing about it, though, that really strikes me is that it didn't stop with members of the United States Senate. Did it, Attorney General Bondi? It didn't stop here at all. I mean, just as egregious, maybe more so than tapping the phones of U.S. senators, is this memo that I know you've seen before. Let's just look at it again. This is an FBI memo from the same time period, I might add, from the same time period, in which the Federal Bureau of Investigation attempts to recruit informants into Catholic parishes in this country. So here you have an administration that is activating the FBI against its political opponents and tapping the phones of United States senators. Can I just say that again for my colleagues, for the benefit of my colleagues on the other side of the dais?
Hawley follows up with documented evidence, quoting a New York Times report claiming President Biden personally pushed for Trump's prosecution. He says that statement set the tone for everything that came next: investigations, leaks, and aggressive legal actions that looked more political than judicial. For the older generation, this brings flashbacks to when political leaders blurred the line between justice and revenge. The idea that a sitting president might influence prosecution against a rival carries heavy constitutional weight. Then comes the part that stunned the room. Hawley cites an internal FBI memo discussing informants inside Catholic churches. For many Americans of faith, that's not just concerning, it's offensive. The idea of government agents watching worshipers feels like something out of a Cold War story, not modern America. Hawley's point lands hard. When ideology starts guiding investigations, everyone's freedom shrinks. What's your view? Can a democracy stay free if its faith communities become intelligence targets?
Tapping the phones of United States senators. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't maybe what will you do in the future. This isn't, oh gee, can you imagine a situation? This happened. This happened. And this happened. The targeting of Catholics in this country because Joe Biden and his FBI didn't like Catholics who went to a certain kind of mass. I mean, good God in heaven, what is happening to this country? What happened under Joe Biden? Or then how about this? The infamous school board memo, where Merrick Garland, at the direction of the White House, issued a memo activating the FBI's counterterrorism division against parents who attended school board meetings and had the temerity to ask what their kids were being taught. And some of those parents were treated like this. Let's just remember. Let's remember how parents were treated. Treated like this man.
That's right.
A parent at a school board meeting, I think in Virginia, who was drug out of the school board meeting. He's bloodied there, you can see it. And what was the response of Joe Biden's DOJ and FBI? It was to issue a memorandum saying that people like this ought to be investigated by the counterterrorism unit. And unbelievably, they were. They were. Or how about this? Let's remember Mark Houck and the pro-lifers who were prosecuted for what? For going to a clinic, an abortion clinic, and praying on a sidewalk outside an abortion clinic. This is Mark Houck and his beautiful family at Mass. This man, at the direction of Joe Biden's FBI, this man had an FBI SWAT team.
Hawley shifts focus from politicians to the people, accusing the DOJ of targeting everyday Americans. He recalls parents who spoke out at school board meetings and found themselves flagged as threats. He describes pro-life activist Mark Houck's arrest in front of his wife and children, an image that outraged viewers nationwide. For many Tier 1 Americans, this moment cuts deep. Whether conservative, moderate, or liberal, no citizen wants to fear their government. Hawley argues this is the core problem, that a culture of intimidation has replaced accountability. Viewers who lived through the 1960s protests or 1980s reform debates know how quickly government power expands once it starts labeling dissent as dangerous. That's the undercurrent of Hawley's argument, that liberty doesn't vanish overnight, it erodes case by case. So what do you think? Are these isolated mistakes, or do they reflect a system slowly losing its balance between authority and freedom?
Come to his door in the early morning hours with his beautiful children there, terrorizing them with weapons drawn. He was then arrested and prosecuted. Unfortunately, a jury acquitted him. This is what was happening under Joe Biden. United States senators spied upon. Former presidents, the political opponents of the president at the time, targeted, prosecuted. Pro-lifers, targeted, prosecuted. Catholics, targeted, prosecuted. 92 conservative organizations put under surveillance, targeted for potential prosecution. Gee, I don't know. Would you call that an example of weaponization, Attorney General Bondi? Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Senator Hawley, that is the ultimate weaponization, and weaponization under Donald Trump has ended. It has ended. Harmeet Dillon is running our civil rights unit, and she is doing an incredible job. No longer will parents be targeted. No longer will parents who care about whether their elementary school children have to read a transgender book be targeted and told they cannot have any say in their child's education. That has ended under this administration. People can worship freely, whether they're Catholics at synagogues or Muslims. Everyone can worship freely. That was the ultimate weaponization. They were targeting Catholics. No longer. They have been targeting so many American citizens throughout this country. And Senator Hawley, you have been a champion of this, and thank you for being a champion of that. But under Donald Trump's watch, it has ended.
You know, I think about some of the abuses of power in this country's history, and there's been, sadly, a lot of them by members of the executive branch over the years, whether it's Watergate, whether it's what J. Edgar Hoover did in his time at the FBI, spying on many public figures, RFK, MLK, JFK, you name it. And I just have to say, what we now know happened in the last 4 years under this administration surpasses all of that. It surpasses all of it, not just for the interference in the legislative branch, not just for the blatant disregard for the separation of powers, not just for the blatant disregard for the First Amendment, but for the targeting of ordinary American citizens who can't afford lawyers, who can't afford to mount a defense, who when the FBI knocks at their door or comes with the SWAT team, they don't know what to do. It is absolutely a disgrace. It is a stain on the history of this country and on the conscience of this country, what this administration did in the last 4 years. So here's what I think needs to happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly.
Attorney General Pam Bondi responds, insisting the weaponization era is over and promising full reform inside the Justice Department. She thanks legal advisor Harmeet Dillon for restoring integrity to the Civil Rights Division and pledges that no citizen will be targeted for faith or politics. But Senator Hawley isn't satisfied. He demands a special prosecutor and a complete audit of every controversial investigation. The tone turns sharp but controlled. Bondi speaks for trust. Hawley speaks for proof. And watching from home, Americans feel the tension. Promises versus accountability. Older viewers have seen these pledges before, from the Church Committee in the 70s to more recent reform vows that quietly disappeared. But in today's digital age, evidence has a way of resurfacing. Hawley closes with a message that feels timeless. The government must serve the people, not monitor them. That's the takeaway echoing far beyond Washington tonight. Do you think this time reform will be real? Or will history repeat itself once the cameras go dark?
Who approved the wiretaps on United States senators? Who knew about it? What agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI? I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo. Who was involved with it? How far did it go? I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know that, Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to do oversight hearings. We need to have thorough hearings into what has happened these last 4 years and this abuse that has now just been uncovered, because we have to ensure that it stops. As you just said, Attorney General Bondi, we have to ensure that it stops. This chapter in American history needs to come to a close, never to be opened again. The use of the most powerful law enforcement bodies in the world against ordinary citizens and political opponents must end once and for all. And we have a chance to do it, and it needs to be done with a thorough investigation, full transparency. And those who violated laws need to be prosecuted. I thank you for what you're doing, Attorney General Bondi. I hope that you will launch a thorough investigation. I hope you'll appoint a special prosecutor. Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll hold hearings. And with that, I yield.
Yeah. Before I call on Blumenthal, I want to, without objection, introduce into the record a document that General Bondi helped to declassify. The document is a Ray FBI announcement.
In the end, this wasn't just a political clash. It was a mirror held up to American democracy. Senator Hawley demanded accountability. Attorney General Bondi promised reform. But the real verdict belongs to the public, to the people who decide whether these hearings lead to truth, or just another cycle of outrage and silence. If you care about fairness, privacy, and the balance of power, keep watching these stories closely, because when citizens stop paying attention, power stops answering questions.